checking a radiator, something that not everybody does, and it can be a simple issue to why your room isn't quite as warm as you thought it should be. Let's have a look at where the radiator is and position it against our furniture. So if we brought our sofa up against the radiator, we are now going to block our air supply. And if we block our air supply at the bottom of the radiator, the draft will not create the heat rise from the cold temperature through the radiator and taking it up and into your room. A simple touch test where we can just put our hand on the radiator and check that it is evenly hot all the way around. Now if we find cold spots at certain points, now that could be just due to sludge in your radiator and your fins are not clear for the hot water to move completely through. Is it hot at the bottom? And then if it is cold at the top, then all we've got an air pocket at this point, which means the top half is completely full of air and the bottom half is completely full of water. So the simple solution for that would be to bleed the radiator. But before you bleed the radiator, you need to understand what type of heating system you have. Because if I bleed this radiator on a combi boiler, I will take pressure out of the system, which means that all I would physically have to do is, once I've bled that radiator or other radiators, all I need to do is come back and refill from the filling loop, which is on this boiler, is up here, under here, and we would just check the gauge with the boiler in the off position to make sure that it goes back above 1 bar or into the green zone that most boilers operate on. Then we can restart the heating. So what we do is, if we're going to do this air pocket at the top, then we've got an air vent here, and what we've got to just make sure is that the outlet hole that the air is going to come out of is clearly facing away from your wall, because otherwise you will put dirty water all over your decoration and that would be no good. So you simply just get yourself a piece of tissue, a radiator key or a flat-headed screwdriver, as what I'm using at this point, and you just release till the water comes out, and then you reclose. Give it a wipe just to make sure that it's reclosed. Now this is also a good indication of whether your system is clean, because if you bleed that and you get dirty marks on here, black marks, then you've got sludge in your system, and it should be a warning that these are reasons why radiators start to stop working, and it's a good time to get somebody in and perhaps give it a power flush. Okay, if it's just an individual radiator that's doing that because of these blockages, then simply we could close our valves off to completely closed. Remembering that on TRVs we have 2 points of closure. One is a frost point, which is not closed. If we go to 0, this valve is completely closed. And then we would also then shut off this end, and hopefully we would either have a drain valve here, or we will break these connections carefully, and as it's only a small rad, we will get our thumbs on the end, take the rad, take it outside, and then tip it into a bucket rather than all over the patio where you may stain your patio. Turn it upside down, feed it through with a garden hose so that it feeds through the radiator, comes out the other end, and then you can reinstate and re-bleed as per what I said earlier, making sure your boiler does not lose its pressure. The other thing that the radiators may not be producing is simply because the valves are not open fully. So if you've got your valve on 2 or 3 and the room feels a little bit cold, it's generally because the TRV has got to about 18 degrees of temperature around the sensor, which is this bit, and it says, right, I'm warm enough, and it will now close, and it has to wait for that temperature to drop. So it might just be that you just need to tweak it up to 4 or 5 to make sure that it is fully open. Now if you've done that and it hasn't quite opened or hasn't quite started working again, The next thing would be to remove it, and now all it does is unscrew. Now I've done this with my hand, but in most cases you will just need a pair of grips to release that screw. And then all you do is you can turn the TRV upside down, and then you can give the pin just a push up and down, just to make sure that it's free. And sometimes if you give it a quick shove, you might see the pin will lift slightly more than it was, which means that you've actually freed up a little bit of dirt around here that was making it stick. If these valves are kept in one position at all times, then the valve will stick. So if you've got the valve and the valve has been at 3 for quite a long time, then tentatively that when you open it to 4, the pin will not move, and it needs just that little bit of assistance. If it doesn't move, then potentially that valve will need replacing or taking off, flushed out with the pin movable, and then put it back. The other end, again, what we could have here, because the radiator could be balanced, what we could have is we could have a bit of sludge just getting up to this point, but it's not open enough to allow it to flow through the radiator. So simply a small adjustable spanner, and all we do then is just give the valve a tweak into a slightly more open position, put the hand there, and you should then feel the heat. You can do this while the boiler is on, so that you can feel that heat generation being whizzed across that radiator. If that works, then you're fine. If you keep opening it and it doesn't work, then potentially what we've got is an issue on the return pipe that is not connecting back to the main circuit back here, which will be under your floor somewhere. And what it means is we might have a blockage and there is no return path. This radiator will not work. So that was a demonstration on simple things to check on a radiator that you can do yourself. But if you don't feel confident in what we've shown you, just make sure that you get yourself a professional qualified engineer to do it for you.